Chapter 51 Youxiang Qiluo Immortal Product. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Oscar looked at the clearly defined spring not far away and said with a serious expression. If I was only 30% sure about curing your poison, now with the existence of the ice and fire eyes, my certainty can be increased to 50%. Hearing this answer, Dugu'ao looked a little sad. Only 50%? Oscar nodded. Your body has been soaked in poison for so many years, and the chance of being cured is already very high. However, even if it cannot be cured, it will be enough to relieve the pain of your body. Oscar did not finish his words in order to leave a way out for himself. If he failed to help Dugu'ao detoxify, he would not let Dugu'ao have bad thoughts about him because of his boasts. However, although Oscar could not guarantee Dugu'ao, he still had confidence in Duguyan's poison. Looking at Dugu'ao with a somewhat complicated expression, Oscar continued, but I am sure that I can completely cure Sister Duguyan's poison. After hearing this, Dugu'ao's expression recovered and he said to Oscar, as long as you can cure Yan, you can use this treasure land at will in the future. How about it? Oscar nodded seriously. Your Majesty, this is serious. I have already agreed to this matter before. Even if you don't give me any reward, I will do my best. After saying this, Oscar paused, but since you have this intention, this junior actually does want to study this treasure land carefully. Hearing the conversation between Oscar and Dugu'ao, both Guy Yu and Xiao Xian were confused because they did not know the ice and fire eyes. However, they did know about Oscar's research on drugs, but they didn't expect that Oscar could achieve this level by himself. Duguyan took Oscar's words very seriously. To be honest, she was quite happy when she heard Oscar say he could detoxify her. The only sad thing is that the chance of detoxifying Grandpa is only 50%, so it may not be successful. Your Majesty, I need some time to get familiar with the environment here, and then select the medicinal materials I need. Oscar didn't waste any time and said directly to Dugu'ao. Dugu'ao nodded after hearing this and said solemnly, then I'll leave this place to you. Later, I will try the method you mentioned to refine the toxins into the soul bones in the stone house on the cliff. If there is any need, you can feel free to come up to me. Having said this, Dugu'ao looked at Guy Yu and Xiao Xian again. You too, if you feel that it is inconvenient here, you can go back first. Xiao Ao can be left to my care with peace of mind. Although I, Dugu'ao, am in the Soul Master world, he doesn't have a good reputation, but he is also a person who pays attention to credibility and gratitude. Looking at the current situation, Xiao Ao needs to stay here for a while. Although this is for our grandfather and grandson, you too can rest assured that Dugu'ao will be deeply grateful when the matter is completed. Dugu'ao explained it very seriously, and Guy Yu and Xiao Xian looked at each other. They were willing to believe Dugu'ao, but they were really worried about Oscar. If it weren't for the fact that they didn't know how to make medicine, they wouldn't be standing there not knowing what to do. But at this moment, Oscar came over and said, Teacher Xiao, how about this? You go back to the academy first, and I will come back after settling the matter between your Majesty and Sister Duguyan. My Majesty, no one can hurt me here. There is no need to worry about safety. Hearing Oscar's words, Guy Yu and Xiao Xian hesitated for a moment, and finally Guy Yu told him, everything should be done according to one's ability. His Majesty also said that even if you fail to detoxify him, he will understand that everything must be done with his own power. Safety first. Guy Yu and Xiao Xian planned to listen to Oscar and return to the academy first, because they really didn't know what to do here. Faced with Guy Yu's instructions, Oscar also took them to heart. After the master and apprentice briefly said goodbye, Dugu'ao sent them away from the poisonous formation. At this time, only Oscar and Duguyan were left under the cliff. Oscar glanced at Duguyan. I'm afraid your body can't adapt to the environment here, so don't go in soon. Duguyan nodded when he heard this, because Oscar was right. It would be better for her to stay in the outermost area. If she entered the range of the ice and fire eyes, her body would be poisoned by the terrifying heat and extreme cold. Backlash, Duguyan nodded and chose to stay where he was. Oscar then moved closer to the ice and fire eyes. Looking around, there are all kinds of plants all around the ice and fire eyes, in various shapes and forms. and it looks like a plant paradise. The plants here are all rare. Just at a glance, what you see before your eyes are elixirs that are 10,000 years old: snow silkworm, cinnabar lotus. However, Oscar did not stop at these elixirs, because his goal was not these elixirs, but immortal products. Oscar's eyes wandered among the various exotic flowers and plants, and finally locked on the large pale pink flower. Then Oscar stepped forward. When he got close to the big flower, a faint fragrance hit his nostrils. These large pale pink flowers have no extra leaves. The stems are 3 feet long. The flowers are huge and have a diameter of 10 feet. Each petal looks as clear as crystal. The pale pink flowers gently float with the water mist. Swinging, growing on the bank where the red and white springs meet. The stamens of this large flower are lavender, like purple diamonds inlaid inside. Although the fragrance spreads far, it is not strong, and the light fragrance is refreshing. When Oscar came close to this big flower, he sniffed it lightly above the stamens. Then the uncomfortable feeling he had just experienced when he came to the ice and fire eyes for the first time disappeared in an instant. Oscar looked at the flower with satisfaction. Big flower with a smile: as long as he has this thing, all the poisons in the world will be ineffective against him. Oscar can rely on the magical effect of this big flower to unscrupulously study the herbs in the ice and fire eyes. The name of this big flower is Youxiang Qiluo Immortal Product. The aroma of Youxiang Qiluo Immortal Product is quiet and elegant. Within the range where it is located, any poison has no effect. Its fragrance has the effect of neutralizing hundreds of poisons. Of course, if you have been poisoned before entering the range of its fragrance, then the Youxiang Qiluo Immortal Product will have no effect. It can be said that it is the best antitoxic grass, but it is a pity that it cannot detoxify it. But even this is enough, because Oscar will not let himself be poisoned easily. The reason why Oscar immediately looked for this fragrant Qiluo Immortal as soon as he entered the range of the ice and fire eyes was to prevent himself from accidentally inhaling poison when studying the herbs inside. Because although the ice and fire eye is one of the 3 major cornucopias, which breeds countless spiritual herbs and fairy herbs, at least half of them are poisonous due to its special structure of extreme heat and extreme cold, just like the ice and fire eye. The special 2 clear springs in Yi's eyes are as different as each other. Without any hesitation, Oscar decisively took off the Youxiang Qiluo Immortal Product, and then took the Youxiang Qiluo Immortal Product and began to observe around the ice and fire eyes. He wanted to know how many herbs he knew in it. Please collect, recommend, and vote for me monthly. Chapter 52: Ice and Fire Alchemy Body. You are listening at novelfull.audio. When Dugu'ao came back, he found that Oscar had entered the Eye of Ice and Fire. After thinking about it, he still did not disturb Oscar. He took Duguyan directly to the stone house on the cliff. Dugu'ao now really wants to try the method that Oscar said. If it can be successful and has no side effects, Dugu'ao will make plans for Duguyan as soon as possible. Oscar briefly looked at the herbs in Binghuo Liangyi's eyes, and Oscar's excited heart gradually calmed down. If it were anyone else who knew the efficacy of these medicinal herbs, they would probably be eager to stuff those heavenly and earthly treasures into their mouths, but Oscar would never do this, because now he not only knows the functions of these heavenly and earthly treasures, but also knows how terrifying they are. If used improperly, immortal products can also turn into deadly poisons. These herbs, which are at the level of heavenly materials and earthly treasures, have extremely strong medicinal properties. If too much is taken, irreparable side effects will definitely occur. After all, Oscar knows the principle of compensating for excess. But having said that, Oscar admires Dugu'ao very much, because Oscar knows that Dugu'ao may not know these herbs as clearly as he does, but he should also know that there are many benefits among these herbs, but he can endure it. He doesn't take it, which shows that he still has some research on drugs, and Dugu'ao's own perseverance is strong enough to be able to resist touching these things. Therefore, people's ability to break through the title Douluo is not only due to luck, but also accounts for a large part of it. After a brief look around, Oscar found that he knew a lot of medicinal herbs here. Although he didn't know all of them, Oscar basically knew the ones he needed. And this is enough. After all, there will be plenty of opportunities to learn in the future, so just use it now. after confirming some things, Oscar also had his own plan. After much hesitation, Oscar walked towards the extremely cold end of the hot spring. Soon, Oscar came to a stop in front of a white herb. At this time, Oscar has fully mobilized the soul power in his body, but a layer of white mist still appears on the surface of his skin. Although he has soul power to protect his body, Oscar's body is still trembling because he is bear the impact of the extremely cold air. The top of this white herb looks like a large white flower, octagonal in shape, with stamens shining like ice crystals in the center. This flower does not reveal any fragrance, and its location is the center point on the side of Hanjiyin Quan. This thing is called octagonal ice grass, which is a strange cold flower that can chill people's hearts and freeze their consciousness. The cold within 10 meters of this grass is overwhelming. If it stays for a little longer, the cold poison will attack the heart and there is no cure. Let alone eating it, even being next to it will be unlucky. If you want to pick it, you must use gold and iron. Although this star anise ice herb is also an immortal product, it is not beneficial. On the contrary, it is a rare and highly poisonous plant, but this is only for a single immortal product. If the star anise ice grass is taken together with another fairy-grade herb, then the two fairy-grade herbs are compatible with each other and become a peerless tonic, which can even contribute to changing the fate of the soul master himself. Another fairy herb is called Yehuaxingjiashu. Its effect is just opposite to that of star anise ice grass. Yehuaxingjiashu is extremely hot and different from the picking method of star anise ice grass. Yehuaxingjiashu only has it can be obtained from jade, otherwise its efficacy will be greatly reduced. At this moment, when he came to the octagonal black ice grass, Oscar did not dare to wait or hesitate any longer. He took out a dagger from the soul guide, and quickly swung the dagger in his hand, instantly cutting off the octagonal black ice grass from the top of the root. Then I saw the azure soul power of Oscar's left hand suddenly moving and condensing, and a flawless jade hand condensed out. This is the method of using one of the two skills of Oscar's azure jade sword, but because only the state of the sword can perfectly unleash the power of the azure Ling jade sword, Oscar chose to repair the sword. In fact, his externally attached soul bone can create various shapes and items he wants by condensing this skill, provided the soul power is sufficient. The jade hand that appeared out of thin air instantly grabbed the octagonal black ice grass, and then Oscar's figure quickly headed towards the extremely hot fire spring. The Lihuaxingjiao is fiery red in color, and its shape is somewhat similar to vegetables, but its extremely hot characteristics can incinerate anything that comes close to it. Oscar directly condensed a jade sword to cut off Lihuaxingjiao Shu from above the root, and then condensed a jade hand to pick up Lihuaxingjiao Shu. The moment the two grass jelly plants gathered in front of Oscar, they were still extremely cold and extremely hot before. When they gathered in front of Oscar, the cold and hot atmospheres disappeared at the same time. At this time, the star anise ice grass was covered with a layer of faint red light, while the fiery apricot jiaoshu was covered with a layer of faint white air. Oscar knew that there could not be any hesitation at this time. After the two fairy grasses met each other, although they would be restrained by each other's breath, their effects would completely disappear after 10 breaths. So without any hesitation, Oscar pinched two fairy herbs and put them into his mouth. Although the two immortals were poisonous, after being restrained from each other, they no longer had the domineering power they had before. They melted in the mouth and turned into body fluids that flowed down the throat. At this moment, Oscar only felt that the bottom of his tongue was full of fluids and the fragrance overflowed, but in almost 3 breaths, Oscar's body trembled violently, and then, a layer of icy blue rose directly from his feet. In the blink of an eye, Oscar's entire body turned completely blue, and then another layer of red rose. At this time, Oscar looked like a freshly cooked shrimp. If anyone is observing Oscar at this moment, they will notice that Oscar's body is alternating between blue and red, looking extremely magical, but just such a simple alternation process caused Oscar's spirit to almost collapse. The impact of the two extreme auras, the pain even exceeded the sum of his countless hard training. However, he still barely had control over his body, so he quickly took a deep breath, and Oscar jumped directly towards the ice and fire eyes in front of him. His whole body just fell down from the intersection of the extremely cold Yin spring and the hot Yang spring. With just a popping sound, Oscar's whole body was submerged into the spring water, and he sank into it in an instant. the reason why Oscar did not enter the Eyes of Ice and Fire immediately after taking the 2 immortal herbs was because he had to wait for the effects of the medicine to take effect. Otherwise, if he fell into the water just a moment earlier, his body would be gone. At this time, when he entered the water after the drug took effect, Oscar didn't feel much anymore, because the pain caused by the star anise ice grass and the apricot had caused all his perception of the outside world to disappear instantly. At this time, Oscar had no intention of thinking about anything else. He just used all his soul power in his body and used the ice and fire eyes to absorb and refine the medicinal effects of the 2 immortal herbs, and with the effect of the ice and fire eyes, the 2 highly toxic fairy herbs that Oscar takes will also have a strong promoting effect, promoting Oscar's absorption of them, and converting his huge and terrifying ice and fire energy into strengthen your body and transform yourself. Please collect, recommend, and vote for me monthly. Come on, bro, whether you can get recommendations this week will depend on Thursday's PK. The cute brothers will vote for you and bring the fire. Thank you. Chapter 53 Sad Duguyan. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The clothes on Oscar's body turned into ashes and dissipated the moment he jumped into the ice and fire eyes. Before that, Oscar took off the soul guide on his right hand to avoid damage. Oscar, who had sunk into the ice and fire eyes, only felt that his body was being forged from the inside out. Although the ice and fire energies had been neutralized to some extent, they stirred crazily after entering his body. The medicinal power contained in the top-grade medicinal herbs is so terrifying. Ice and fire are incompatible. Under the impact of the instant burst of energy, Oscar can only rely on willpower to resist. At this moment, he was like an ordinary piece of iron, forged into a piece of fine iron through the octagonal black ice grass, the delicate medicinal effect of the fierce apricot and the special effects of the ice and fire eyes. Time passed slowly, and soon one day passed. When Oscar opened his eyes again, his whole person had changed greatly. After a day, Oscar had slowly absorbed into his body the terrifying medicinal power contained in the star anise ice grass and the fiery apricot tree. With the help of his ice and fire eyes, after exercising and transforming the body as much as possible, most of the remaining medicinal power was deposited in the meridians and bones of the body. That's right, although Oscar absorbed and refined 2 immortal herbs, he couldn't fully absorb them in such a short period of time because the medicinal power contained in these 2 herbs was too huge and he couldn't absorb them in a short period of time. In this day, Oscar only absorbed and refined 1/3 of the energy of the 2 fairy herbs, and this had already reached Oscar's current limit. There will be no way to quickly refine its energy in the future, but it will take time to refine these terrifying energies. Even so, Oscar has reaped huge benefits. First of all, his physical fitness has reached at least level 55, because of the ice and fire alchemy body. Oscar's body has been greatly transformed. Although the transformation is still ongoing, Oscar now has a special physique. This physique is invulnerable to all poisons. Under the special effects of star anise ice grass and fiery apricot, the future Oscar will not be afraid of any poisonous intrusion, and he himself is a perfect antidote. Now a drop of Oscar's blood can be regarded as a treasure antidote. It can be said that he is completely a treasure. Moreover, the current ice and fire eyes no longer pose any threat to Oscar. The cold Yin spring is like cold water, and the blazing Yang spring is just warm water. Not only will you not be damaged by soaking in it, it will actually be very comfortable. Moreover, the effectiveness of the 2 immortal herbs in Oscar's own body also needs to rely on the 2 eyes of ice and fire to be continuously and completely absorbed by him, so as to achieve the perfect alchemy body of ice and fire. However, Oscar got the fairy medicinal herb that he dreamed of, but it made Dugu'ao and Duguyan suffer, because although Duguyan followed Dugu'ao to the stone house yesterday morning, Duguyan wanted to deliver food to Oscar in the afternoon, but when Duguyan came outside the ice and fire eye, Oscar could not be seen. At that time, Duguyan became anxious instantly and couldn't help shouting Oscar's name outside the Binghuoliang eye. However, no matter how Duguyan shouted, he could not get a response from Oscar. Until Dugu'ao heard Duguyan's voice, he immediately just come down and check it out. Then he realized that Oscar was nowhere to be found. Dugu'ao was also a little anxious when he found out that Oscar was missing, because he now quite admires the child Oscar, and this kid himself said that he could detoxify Duguyan, but now he is missing. Come on, how can Dugu'ao not be anxious? But soon Dugu'ao noticed something was wrong, because he found that 3 herbs were missing around the Binghuoliangyi eye. Originally, Dugu'ao thought that Oscar had run away with the herbs, but when he thought of Oscar's character and the poisonous array he arranged outside, Dugu'ao dismissed the idea, because if nothing else, even if Oscar's knowledge is not inferior to his own, the poison array he has set up outside is something that not even Contra dares to touch head-on, let alone Oscar, a little guy who has just reached Soul Master. So in the end, there was only one possibility. Dugu'ao suddenly came to Binghuoliangyi's eyes. Since Oscar didn't leave, there was only one possibility, that is, Oscar fell into the eye of ice and fire. The two special extreme cold and extreme heat of this eye of ice and fire, even Dugu'ao himself did not dare to touch too much. If Oscar ran into it, he would be instantly transformed. For fly ash. Originally, Dugu'ao planned to remind Oscar, but at that time Oscar himself said the name of the ice and fire eyes. He obviously knew this place, so Dugu'ao didn't remind him anything. After all, they all know each other, so they will naturally protect themselves. But Dugu'ao never expected that Oscar would fall into it. The reason why Dugu'ao was so sure was because he found 2 soul guides on the shore next to the spring, and these 2 soul guides belonged to Oscar. Looking at the bottomless spring water, Dugu'ao couldn't feel Oscar's breath at all, because the extreme cold and heat completely isolated his mental power. So even if you don't want to admit it, the final result is that the Oscar may just be gone. When Dugu'ao told Duguyan the news, Duguyan was stunned for a moment, and then a wave of sadness surged into his heart. Duguyan was originally very happy today because she had made a good friend for the first time in 15 years. This good friend not only understood her, tolerated her, did not dislike her, but even enlightened her, and even offered to help her in the end. She detoxifies. Duguyan has already found a good friend who can last a lifetime. She has already told Dugu'ao that after obtaining the 3rd soul ring, she will go to Shrek Academy with Oscar, and Dugu'ao has already agreed to her. Dugu'ao even joked that although Oscar is only 11 years old, he is already taller than Duguyan. As long as they don't tell each other when they are together, no one will know that Oscar is only 11 years old. Moreover, Oscar is the best that Dugu'ao has ever seen in terms of talent and appearance. If Duguyan can get along well with Oscar, in the future, at that time, Duguyan was so embarrassed when she heard this. She rolled her eyes at Dugu'ao and said that her grandfather was not upright. She was obviously the elder sister, so how could she have all kinds of thoughts about her younger brother? Unexpectedly, just one afternoon passed, and his good friend, good brother, and even good husband, were just gone. To be honest, although they had only known each other for a few hours, or only half a day, Duguyan still cared about Oscar very much. Now that Oscar was gone, Duguyan fell down on the spot and cried sadly. Dugu'ao sighed when he saw Duguyan who suddenly looked like this. He came to his granddaughter with Oscar's soul guide and comforted him softly. Yen, things are impermanent. Some things are beyond our control. For Xiao, I don't want to believe it, but... Before Dugu'ao finished speaking, Duguyan raised his head and looked at Dugu'ao with red eyes. Grandpa. Why? Why is God targeting me? I just gave me hope, and now there is only despair. Dugu'ao was very sad when he heard this, but what could he do? Although he is a titled Douluo, he does not have the ability to bring back the dead. Dugu'ao patted Duguyan's back gently, and sighed after a long time. Yen, Grandpa will go to the Balak Kingdom tomorrow and go to Xiao's academy to inform his teacher. I am also responsible for this matter. When I arrive, it's time to see how we can compensate them. Duguyan nodded slightly when he heard this, but the tears still flowed down uncontrollably. They had just met, so why was he so sad? Duguyan didn't know what feelings she had for Oscar, but no matter what they were, it didn't matter anymore, because, the person was no longer there. Please collect, recommend and vote for me monthly. Chapter 54 Capital. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Early the next morning, after Dugu'ao settled Duguyan, he set off for the kingdom of Barak. Although Oscar told Dugu'ao the location of Shrek Academy at that time, this academy used to be Dugu'ao's, so it took some time to find it, and it was natural to go there. Just earlier, it's just that Dugu'ao is also very helpless about this. People are still there in the morning, but they are gone in the afternoon. Moreover, Guy Yu and Xiao Xian were only there yesterday morning. They probably haven't returned to the academy yet. If I met them halfway, how would I tell Guy Yu and the others? He said that he was going to retreat to study the method that Oscar said to refine the speed into the soul bone, and then Oscar would be gone in the afternoon. Dugu'ao even felt that with Guy Yu's personality, he might fight him with a sword, if Dugu'ao usually doesn't like Guy Yu, but now because of his negligence, Oscar has disappeared from the world, so he can't take action against Guy Yu anymore, right? Dugu'ao was depressed all the way as he walked, nodding his head in relief, wondering when he, the mighty Poison Douluo, had ever worried about such a thing. And just as Dugu'ao walked away and stopped outside the eyes of Binghuoliang, Duguyan, who missed Oscar, saw a scene that he would never forget in his life. After Oscar opened his eyes, he felt his physical condition and showed a charming smile with satisfaction, then Oscar jumped directly out of the spring. The naked Oscar came to the shore and prepared to take out the clothes from his soul guide and put them on. Then he could start preparing the antidote for Dugu'ao and Duguyan. It was just that Oscar searched around the shore and found that he couldn't find his soul guide. Then Oscar noticed the messy 45-size shoe sole prints on the shore, and it turned out that these were Dugu'ao's. Because Oscar himself has 42 feet, and the soles of his shoes have no patterns. But Oscar couldn't figure out why Dugu'ao came to take his soul tool. Was it a prank? And shouldn't Dugu'ao take the time to experiment with the method he told him? Why are you still so free? Oscar, who couldn't figure out the problem, didn't want to think about it anymore, and walked directly towards the outside of the ice and fire eyes naked. After all, he had no clothes now, so he had to get the soul guide back and put on his clothes first, but Oscar didn't know that so many things happened after he entered the ice and fire eyes, and he didn't expect that the ice and fire eyes directly cut off his breath, making Dugu'ao think that he fell into it and turned into juice. Just as Oscar walked outside the ice and fire eyes, Duguyan walked towards him. Then the two looked at each other, and Duguyan let out a shocking scream. Then Oscar saw Duguyan covering his eyes with his hands, but what Oscar was confused about was why the gaps between Duguyan's fingers were so big. The body that is still staring through the fingers is spinning. For a long time, Duguyan said in disbelief, Are you a human or a ghost? Oscar was a little confused when he heard this question, and quickly covered his money with his hands, because he found that Duguyan didn't cover it at all, and let her finish reading. In fact, Oscar is not that shy. After all, he already has some thoughts about Duguyan. Let Duguyan see him first, which is enough to make all the men in Douluo Continent feel inferior. Maybe he can also let Duguyan treat him. But it doesn't make sense for Duguyan to keep watching like this. After all, Dugu'ao is still here. If the old man sees this scene, he might have to skin himself. After covering his capital, Oscar smiled bitterly and replied, Sister, of course I am a human being. We haven't seen each other for a day, so you don't recognize me? Duguyan still couldn't believe it when he heard this. After all, his grandfather had personally said that Oscar was gone. Dugu'ao was a titled Douluo. Even a titled Douluo couldn't find Oscar. Where could Oscar go? How is it possible? Yesterday afternoon, Grandpa clearly said that you were missing. Duguyan's green eyes stared at Oscar, as if he wanted to see through Oscar. Oscar was stunned for a moment when he heard this, and then he understood. It was probably that when Dugu'ao came to find him, he had already taken star anise ice grass and fiery apricot jiao and entered the ice and fire eyes, so Dugu'ao was not found. Then, this old man took away his soul guide. Thinking of this, Oscar discovered that Duguyan was wearing his 2 silver soul guide rings on the index finger and middle finger of his right hand. What the hell, it's you. I thought it was your father. Oscar was speechless for a while. He suddenly felt that Duguyan was interested in him, because isn't Duguyan's operation like a boy deliberately taking away the clothes of a girl he likes while the girl is taking a bath, and then the boy sends them back to her, taking advantage of the opportunity to have sex for free and gain a good impression. But Oscar had a vague feeling that something was wrong. Why was Duguyan so nervous even though he was staring at him intently? However, Oscar still explained, because he had no intention of hiding it from Dugu'ao and the others. He only heard Oscar say, "I am not here because I entered the ice and fire eyes. I took 2 fairy herbs yesterday, and then in order to absorb the medicinal power for refining those 2 immortal products has gone in. Your grandfather probably didn't notice me." Having said this, Oscar also glanced at Duguyan's right hand. "No, my soul guide was thrown on the shore at that time. Didn't you pick it up?" Hearing this, Duguyan was stunned for a moment, and then she realized that Oscar was fine. Although Oscar did fall into the ice and fire eye, he did so because he had taken some fairy herbs and needed to absorb the refining power. So even Grandpa was deceived by Oscar yesterday? After confirming that Oscar was real, Duguyan immediately put his fingers together. This is real. So the hot thing she just saw was real. But Oscar is only 11 years old. What did he eat when he grew up? Even if the person is tall, is that one that big? Duguyan is 15 years old. Although he usually has no friends and has no contact with anything, it is precisely because he has no friends that Duguyan particularly likes to read various story novels and is relatively knowledgeable about some things, but today, she saw a huge capital that she might never forget in her life. Various emotions like surprise, nervousness, joy, and excitement were running through her mind. She was happy that Oscar was fine, and even changed from joy to excitement, but she was also very nervous because she had seen all Oscar. At this time, should she go up and tell Oscar that she could be responsible? After all, in this novel, when a boy looks at a girl's body, the girl will either seek death or have to marry that man, and those men will have the courage to take responsibility at this time and show that they will be responsible for the girl. So do you want to imitate the boy in the story novel? Be a brave and responsible person and make a promise to Oscar. To prevent him from committing suicide because he was blinded by him. After all, she is more talented, knowledgeable, and so handsome than the heroine described in the novel. So Oscar should be more proud, right? Such a proud person has no privacy in front of himself, isn't that? Just when Duguyan was thinking about the drama between the male and female protagonists, Oscar's weak voice sounded, Sister, can you give me back my soul guide first? I need to get dressed. Please collect, recommend, and vote for me monthly. Chapter 55 The World of 241K. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 55 The World of 241K. Duguyan's face was as red as a peach at this time, as if he could squeeze water out of it at any time. After hearing Oscar's words, Duguyan quickly took off Oscar's soul guide in his hand and threw it away. Then Duguyan immediately turned away, not daring to take another look because she was too shy. After all, a storytelling novel is just a storytelling novel, and the real-life scenes make Duguyan really embarrassed to read it again, although she couldn't help but feel excited and happy because Oscar was still alive. The huge shock she just saw also stimulated her, even if he turned his back at this moment, the scene he just saw would inevitably appear in his mind. So awesome. This word could not help but appear in Duguyan's mind. Oscar took the soul guide, then quickly took out a set of clothes and put them on. After arranging them, he came behind Duguyan and patted her shoulder gently. Sister, are you okay? Oscar asked softly. Duguyan was suddenly tapped on the shoulder, and Duguyan's body suddenly trembled. After hearing Oscar's words, she didn't dare to look back, but she was afraid of looking at Oscar. No. It's okay. Duguyan quickly replied. Looking at Duguyan's timid appearance, Oscar felt that it was quite cute. Although he was looked down upon by her, he seemed to be doing well. After thinking for a while, Oscar continued, You don't need to be shy. After all, I am the one being looked at, so I should be the one who is shy. Of course, if you are really embarrassed, the worst thing is that you can ask me to look back. Wouldn't it be better? Before Oscar could finish his words, Duguyan immediately turned around and covered Oscar's mouth, with a red face and said excitedly, No. Oscar did not dodge, and allowed Duguyan to cover his mouth. However, because Oscar did not dodge, he naturally looked at Duguyan. This time he saw the other person's face clearly. Oscar felt that if it really happened in this life, it's not bad to be with Duguyan. After all, if this girl has a good figure and a good face, she is not at a loss. Moreover, they also brought the two dowries of Dugu'ao and Binghua Lianjian. However, Oscar doesn't dare to flirt with Duguyan too presumptuously now. After all, Dugu'ao is still here. If that old man finds out, he may not know how to deal with him. But Oscar will soon change this idea because Dugu'ao is no longer here and it will take some time to come back. Duguyan and Oscar looked at each other for a few seconds and then immediately retracted their hands, then lowered their heads. I didn't mean it, I thought you were gone, who knew you would suddenly appear naked? Duguyan explained a little embarrassedly, obviously embarrassed to show it to Oscar. After all, she was already so shy just after watching Oscar. How could she have the courage to show it to Oscar? Looking at Duguyan's posture as a little girl, Oscar still had some thoughts in his heart. After all, the girl in the original work had a sisterly temperament when she appeared on the stage. Shouldn't she develop it now? How fucking fulfilling is it to raise a little girl into a big sister-in-law? Oscar nodded. Is that so? That's my fault. But haven't I explained it to you? I really didn't expect you to find me. After all, my soul guide is still there. How could the person be gone? Oscar said, looking at Duguyan helplessly, I can't have the soul guide at the expense of my life, right? Hearing this, Duguyan also felt that it made sense. Yesterday, he was too anxious because he couldn't find Oscar and didn't have time to think about it carefully. Now that he heard Oscar's explanation, Duguyan felt that both himself and his grandfather were quite stupid. And when Duguyan thought of Dugu'ao, she reacted instantly, looked at Oscar with an innocent face, and said in a small voice, Oh. Oscar. Oscar looked at Duguyan, huh? Something might be going on. Oscar was puzzled. What? What happened? Grandpa and I thought you were gone. Grandpa just left half an hour ago. He was going to Shrek Academy to tell your teacher the news that you were gone. Upon hearing this, Oscar's expression instantly became strange. Is he so careless? No, was Dugu'ao so fast? I just realized that I was gone yesterday afternoon. Why don't you look for me more? Don't you want to rescue me? However, Oscar understood when he thought that this was the ice and fire eye. This basin was only so large. The mountain was surrounded by Dugu'ao's poisonous formation, and it was impossible to get out. However, it could not be found in the basin, only in ice and fire. Two soul guides were found next to Liang Yi. Anyone would only think of one result, that is, Oscar is gone. Oscar covered his head speechlessly. It was because he had not thought carefully about it. He should have told Dugu'ao when he took star anise ice grass and fire apricot jiao shu. After all, Dugu'ao had promised that he could use the fairy herbs here at will, even if he knew that he would take some, there was a high probability that he would not refuse. However, he did not expect that this time, by some strange combination of circumstances, the other party would think that he was gone. Now, there is definitely no chance to explain. Although Oscar's third soul skill allows Oscar to have the speed of a sharp-tailed swift that is nearly 10,000 years old, it only lasts for 15 minutes at a time. Oscar's stored third soul skills are only a dozen. Even if his own soul power is full, he can only make less than 20 at one time. It is completely unrealistic to rely on this to catch up with a titled Douluo. After all, Dugu'ao was still at level 91. With his speed, he had already run out an unknown distance. Thinking of this, Oscar gradually calmed down. Since he couldn't catch up, he could only let this misunderstanding continue for the time being, because Oscar believed that even if Guy Yu and the others knew the news, they would be devastated and might even attack Dugu'ao, but Dugu'ao would not kill him. After all, although Lao Deng's reputation is not very good, and his personal style of doing things depends on his preference, he is still good at being trustworthy. He is considered invisible under his nose. He will not take action against Guy Yu and the others. Moreover, Dugu'ao himself had promised before that he would take good care of Oscar's safety. Now, the teacher has just left for less than a day, and you have disappeared under the eyes of others. No matter what, it is your fault, Dugu'ao, right? After figuring this out, Oscar could only pray that the two parties would get along well. Then Oscar stopped wasting time, and after explaining what happened to Duguyan, he began to teach her how to extract the poison in her body. It's just that Duguyan doesn't have a soul bone now, so he can't do it directly. He can only make some attempts first to become more familiar with the process and operations. Duguyan was still a little surprised when she saw Oscar return to normal so quickly. After all, she herself had not recovered yet. Moreover, the Big Mac still flashes through his mind from time to time, which makes Duguyan feel somewhat uncomfortable when facing Oscar. When Oscar was explaining the method to Duguyan, he found that Xiaonizi was distracted, and he hit her head lightly. Sister. This is about your life, why don't you take it seriously? What are you thinking? Ouch! Duguyan exclaimed. Although it didn't hurt much, she still covered her forehead and said pitifully, "Who told you to play like this? I almost cried to death when I couldn't find you yesterday. Who knew did you suddenly show up again today?" Looking at Duguyan who looks like a little girl, why does Oscar suddenly feel like he's coaxing his girlfriend? Although the small green apples are tender, they taste astringent. What Oscar hopes most is to have the tenderness of a small apple and the ripeness and deliciousness of a red apple, but obviously this feeling is difficult to encounter in reality except for finding Kunken. Oscar sighed helplessly and comforted himself, "It's my fault. Don't worry. Can I discuss anything with you in advance if I have anything to do in the future? Now let's not get distracted and get down to business first. How about I chat with you in the afternoon?" Hearing this, Duguyan's curved little mouth smiled. "That's pretty much it. I forgive you, Oscar." Holding back from teasing her, Oscar began to seriously explain to Duguyan the details and process of refining the toxin. After Duguyan roughly understood the process, she tried it herself and found that Oscar's method could indeed allow her to extract toxins in her body, and then she gradually became familiar with it. However, because she does not have a soul bone, Duguyan cannot directly extract the poison in her body, and can only make some simple attempts, and not too frequently. Otherwise she will be able to bear the poison. After finishing their busy work, Duguyan took Oscar to the stone house for lunch. The stone houses were several rooms that Duguyan opened directly in the middle of the cliff. Some of them were for retreat, some for preparing poisons, and some for rest. The height of this stone house is about 100 meters away from the ice and fire eyes. Duguyan looked up and down. After being possessed by the martial spirit, Snake Tail could only go down on the path Dugu'ao specially dug for her, otherwise she would fall directly. Died. But this time there was no such trouble with Oscar, and Oscar didn't use his third soul skill. When Duguyan asked to go back to the stone house for dinner, Oscar calmly stretched out his hand to him. Duguyan thought Oscar was going to take her to fly up. After all, Oscar had taken her flying once before, although Duguyan was still a little shy this time. Thinking that she could fly up directly, she still held Oscar's hand. Then Oscar suddenly exerted force on her hand and pulled her directly into Oscar's arms. Duguyan turned around in a circle, then lay in Oscar's arms, and then looked up at Oscar in disbelief, thinking in his mind, "Do you want to be so proactive? I've already done that and you still hug me? We're not holding hands. Can you fly?" Noticing Duguyan's surprised gaze, Oscar smiled slightly. "Sister, you have already seen me out. Why are you so surprised when I give you a hug? Just think of it as repaying the interest to your brother." Then, in Duguyan's surprised gaze, Oscar's left hand flashed with azure soul power, and a 1 meter 2 meter long azure jade sword slowly condensed out. The jade sword floated out of thin air, and then came to stand in front of Oscar. Oscar put his arms around Duguyan's waist and stood up directly. At this moment, Duguyan didn't even have time to be shy, because she was a little confused. "Aren't you a food soul master? Can you still play with a sword?" 4 feet stepped on the jade sword. Duguyan stood in front of Oscar, with his back pressed against Oscar's chest. Oscar's voice came to his ears, "Don't be nervous, I will protect you." The warm breath hit Duguyan's earlobe, causing her to snap out of her daze. Then her cheeks turned red again because she was so close to Oscar. It could be said that Oscar directly held her in his arms at this time, hugging her waist to help her stabilize her body. After Duguyan came back to her senses, her hands felt like they had nowhere to put them. Thinking about what Oscar just said about repaying the interest, Duguyan just felt that something was wrong with her. But now she did admit that she had a little bit of interest in Oscar. Well, she did have a lot of thoughts about Oscar, but she definitely never thought about it. Such close contact soon. Before Duguyan could think about it, the two stepped on the jade sword and flew directly. Duguyan was not afraid of heights, because Dugu'ao often took her to fly, but this was her first time flying with a sword. How could a girl who loves reading novels not have a sweet dream of flying with a sword? But how could it be achieved like this? And also in the way of the heroine in the story novel? The two stepped on each other, and the heroine opened her arms in the hero's arms, enjoying the free wind and facing the setting sun. Not long after, Duguyan couldn't help but open his arms. When Oscar saw that Duguyan's expression changed from shy to one of enjoyment, he did not fly directly to the stone house, but spun around in the air a few times, holding Duguyan in his arms and feeling the hero's happiness. Not to mention, Duguyan's green hair was blown up and hit Oscar's chin and the tip of his nose. The faint fragrance lingered in his heart. The 15-year-old Duguyan's figure was indeed perfect. Occasionally, a little fluctuation would be in his possession. It was so hard that Oscar couldn't help but think about it. Although Oscar is only 11 years old, he can't bear the rapid growth of people from the Douluo Continent. What's more, Oscar has now absorbed 3 soul rings, and his physical development is much better. It's just that I have the heart but not the courage. If I can't hold back and cook with Duguyan now, if Dugu'ao comes back and finds out about it and becomes unhappy, how can I still be cool? Although with the help and benefits he can bring to Dugu'ao, there is a high probability that he will not do anything to him, but Oscar doesn't dare to gamble, and how can it be better to eat secretly than to eat openly and openly? So after Oscar flew 2 circles, he found that he couldn't bear it any longer, and immediately nodded and flew towards the stone house, regardless of whether Duguyan was enjoying himself or not. When they arrived at the stone house, the two of them chatted while eating. During the process, Duguyan's mood gradually eased, but he still couldn't forget Dahiba because the impression was too deep, and she also felt it just now. She moved slightly and felt a hard, big touch on her butt. She even couldn't help but rub it on purpose, but Duguyan didn't dare to ask any questions. She was afraid that Oscar would ask her to look back. Please collect, recommend, and vote for me monthly. Chapter 56 Phoenix Nirvana Pill. You are listening at novelfull.audio. After eating, Oscar continued to familiarize Duguyan with how to extract the poison in her body, so that after she obtained the soul bone, she could detoxify as quickly as possible. And now, because the poison in Dugu'ao and Duguyan's bodies has not been refined yet, even if Oscar gives them detoxification pills to detoxify them, it will be useless, because the poison in their bodies has not been refined, and once detoxified, they will soon be poisoned again. Toxic erosion. Therefore, if they want to detoxify the grandfather and grandson, they must first refine the poison in their bodies into their soul bones, so that after detoxification, they will not be corroded by the poison again. In the process of practicing with Duguyan, Oscar was still not used to this kind of close relationship between the two, because he couldn't help but have wild thoughts. Some people may think this is too fast, right? You've only known each other for a day or two and you're already so familiar. Can we be alone together? And there is still a little ambiguity when we get along. In fact, it was hard for Oscar to believe it before, but after he experienced it himself, he also found it a bit unbelievable, but it was the fact. In fact, this kind of thing is like this. Nothing is absolute. When you meet someone who has a common topic and is attracted to each other, it is possible that you can have a happy conversation in 10 minutes, after chatting for half an hour, we can get to know each other very well. Some topics are mentioned without even knowing it, and it is very natural, and after you part ways, both of you will be particularly looking forward to meeting each other for the second time, and may even make some inexplicable preparations for it. At first Oscar just thought that he wanted to contact Dugu'ao through Duguyan, and then took the opportunity to enter the Ice and Fire Eyes. Until he now entered the Ice and Fire Eyes and took 2 fairy herbs, he discovered that the feeling is still there. If this is the case, Oscar feels that something is wrong, because this is not just an expectation for the Ice and Fire Eyes, it seems that he does have feelings for Duguyan. After thinking about this problem, Oscar did not continue to suppress himself. After all, if Duguyan was with him, Oscar would only make money but not lose, but Oscar doesn't dare to be too presumptuous. After all, he is only 11 years old now. Although he has the ability of a real man now, even if Oscar himself has no mental disorder, Duguyan will not object, but behind Duguyan there is Dugu'ao. Duguyan has some evil thoughts about Oscar, but Dugu'ao may not have them. If the old man finds out that he has cheated on his precious children and granddaughters, he will suffer the consequences. And although the current Duguyan does have thoughts about Oscar, she is not so bold. After all, her current character is not the cold lady she was when she appeared in the original work. For Duguyan, who has had no friends since she was a child and has basically been alone, she is now like a kitten who has just stepped out of her comfort zone. She is timid and shy, and her temperament has not yet been developed, so when Oscar got along with Duguyan again, when he found that he was a little out of control, he decisively chose to practice the Ice and Fire Eyes and prepare some medicines, and since Dugu'ao promised Oscar that he could use the herbs here at will, Oscar would naturally not be polite. Moreover, Oscar knows the fairy herbs and elixirs he needs to use and will not waste them. Therefore, after leaving Duguyan, Oscar will devote himself to serious work and go directly to the Ice and Fire Eyes to collect herbs, refine elixirs, and prepare medicines. In addition, Oscar needs to spend at least half a day practicing in the Ice and Fire Eyes every day. He needs to use the Ice and Fire Eyes to completely absorb and refine the hidden medicinal power in his body. 3 days passed in a flash. After Oscar had prepared the medicinal materials, he began to refine the first batch of elixirs. The elixirs to be refined were actually not difficult, as long as one had mastered enough theoretical knowledge of pharmacology and paired it with the knowledge about the elixirs. After understanding the special medicinal materials, this elixir can be refined. The elixir Oscar is going to refine this time is called Phoenix Nirvana Pill. The main ingredient is an immortal herb called coxcomb phoenix sunflower. This immortal herb has a strong yang nature, and its temperature may not be as scary as the fiery apricot jiao. It is sparse, but in terms of its enthusiasm, it is definitely the most immortal medicinal herb. Use coxcomb phoenix sunflower as the main medicine, and then mix it with several thousand-year-old snow silkworms, ground lotus flowers, lotus silver essence. The dosage of each of these elixirs is Oscar's own according to the characteristics of these elixirs and coxcomb phoenix sunflower. Determined, and this can't be regarded as creating an elixir recipe. After all, although Oscar has a lot of experience in elixir refining, he has not yet reached that level. Oscar prepared various elixirs to refine the elixir with the coxcomb phoenix sunflower just to purify the effects of the coxcomb phoenix sunflower and strive to allow the person who takes it to bring out the full medicinal effects of the coxcomb phoenix sunflower. This is the main purpose of Oscar. And this so-called Phoenix Nirvana Pill Oscar was refined for Ma Hongjun. Although after possessing the second soul skill, Ma Hongjun's evil fire problem has basically been solved. As long as Ma Hongjun releases it regularly through the second soul skill, he will basically no longer be disturbed by the evil fire, but this is not a perfect solution. The most perfect way is to take coxcomb phoenix sunflower, and this can not only help Ma Hongjun purify the evil fire, but also develop Ma Hongjun's talent, greatly improving his strength and potential. Oscar refined it into elixir just so that Ma Hongjun could make perfect use of the coxcomb and phoenix sunflower after taking it again, striving to maximize its utilization. The reason why Oscar himself did not refine the star anise ice grass and fiery apricot jiaoshu was because these two immortal products could not coexist for a long time, so he took them like this later. After confirming the refined elixir, Oscar took out his alchemy furnace from the eyes of ice and fire. He wanted to use the terrifying temperature of the eyes of ice and fire to refine the elixir. Even because of the miraculous power of the ice and fire eyes, the elixir he refined may have miraculous changes. Speaking of which, because of the ice and fire eyes and the two immortal herbs he took, in addition to the improvement in physical fitness and changes in his physique, his martial soul and external soul bones also underwent considerable changes. However, Oscar he wasn't too excited because this was what he had expected before. After all, in the original work, after Tang San took these two immortal herbs, his martial spirit and external spirit bones underwent benign changes, so when Oscar himself felt the changes, he wasn't too excited, and Duguyan didn't ask him this question, so he didn't mention it. After getting ready, Oscar picked the coxcomb phoenix sunflower. It was a red, quivering, soft and silky fairy grass. It looked very simple. It was just composed of red grass leaves. The top of the grass leaves like a chicken comb. But if you look closely, you can find that it is unique. The veins of the leaves are actually red gold. As soon as the grass emerges, the surrounding temperature suddenly rises significantly. However, Oscar, whose physical fitness had improved, didn't care about the temperature. He took the coxcomb phoenix sunflower and threw it into the elixir furnace, and then started refining this immortal elixir. Because Duguyan could not enter the ice and fire eyes, after completing her training, she could only watch Oscar's serious alchemy refining from a distance outside the ice and fire eyes. However, she did not feel bored. Instead, she felt an unprecedented sense of satisfaction. It seemed that just having Oscar here is enough. This feeling was something she had never felt before. It seemed that ever since Oscar's resurrection from the dead, Duguyan's feeling had become particularly obvious. Please collect, recommend, and vote for me monthly. There is no bragging in the book. The author has personally experienced that when he meets a person of the opposite sex that he likes, it is so outrageous. Although he does not go directly to the hotel, he really has something to talk about, and even several members of the other person's family know about it. In addition, please beg for a monthly ticket and continue reading. Thanks for the tip, gentlemen. Chapter 57 The Sad Shrek Academy. You are listening at novelfull.audio. It took Oscar half a day to make the Phoenix Nirvana pill. Judging from its appearance, color and fragrance, Oscar's elixir was finally completed. Although it is not as good as the alchemy skills of a real alchemist, Oscar still has no problem with just turning medicine into pills. In the next few days, Oscar would spend half a day every day refining the immortal elixir, and at night he would practice directly in the ice and fire eyes, when he was with Duguyan. In addition to guiding her in her cultivation, Oscar would also give her many poisons and their preparation methods and effects, because although Duguyan had learned before, it was only because of Dugu'ao's request that Duguyan barely learned a little bit. Before this, Duguyan didn't like poison at all, because she herself had been tortured by poison for so long, but for some reason, when Oscar taught her, not only did she not feel disgusted, but she also studied very seriously. Oscar was quite pleased, because he had some basic knowledge before, and Duguyan was really talented in this area, so he learned things very quickly. It's just that Oscar didn't know what Dugu'ao's expression and thoughts would be if he knew about Duguyan's change. In 7 days, Oscar refined a total of 5 immortal elixirs, but among them, only Hongjun, Oscar, was clear that he could give it to him, because this kid had also been with Oscar for 3 years, and the two had already formed a bond. Deep friendship. Although Hongjun usually looks like Oscar's younger brother, Oscar also truly recognizes Hongjun as his younger brother, so the Phoenix Nirvana pill was prepared for Hongjun. The other 4 immortal elixirs are Qirong Tong Tian pill, 8-petal immortal orchid pill, Narcissus Jade Muscle pill and Qiluo Yujin pill. These are actually the immortal herbs taken by the Shrek 7 monsters in the original work. Oscar did not even change the names of the elixirs. After all, he was not making alchemy, he just purified and amplified the energy of the immortal herbs. It can be said that the effect of these kinds of immortal elixirs has been greatly increased. It is at least 50% higher than taking the immortal elixirs alone, which is equivalent to 1.5 times that of taking only the immortal herbs. This improvement is definitely terrifying. Although a lot of 10,000 elixirs and some rare medicinal materials were consumed in the process, it is definitely worth it. After all, originally a fairy herb could create a genius, but now that the fairy herb is purified and refined into an elixir, the genius who could have created it may become a super genius. It's just that Oscar, the heartbroken red, cannot be removed now, and there is no way to refine it. Moreover, the heartbroken red Oscar does not need to be refined, because it is the emperor among immortals, and no medicinal material is worthy of it. And even if taken alone, the effect of Acacia Heartbroken Red is superior to that of the purified Immortal elixir. This is the tyranny of the Immortal Emperor, of course. It's not that Oscar only refined these 5 Immortal elixirs, but because before he had time to refine the others, Dugu'ao came back with Guiyu. Although Guiyu and Youxiang returned to Shrek Academy one day earlier than Dugu'ao was a titled Douluo after all, so in order to catch up with Guiyu early and tell him the news, it only took Dugu'ao 3 days to arrive. Went to Soto City, and then found Shrek Academy through inquiry. At this time, neither Guiyu nor Youxiang had returned to Shrek, because they did not meet Dugu'ao on the way there. Mainly because Dugu'ao wanted to deliver the news in advance, so he did not take the high road. But Guiyu and Youxiang were not in a hurry, so Shrek returned from the avenue in a carriage. And it would take half a month at the fastest to return to Shrek Academy by carriage, excluding the day Guiyu and the others left early. That meant there were at least 11 days left before Guiyu and the others returned to Shrek Academy, and Dugu'ao's sudden arrival also made Flanders and Zhao Wuji feel like they were facing a formidable enemy, and they thought they had offended a titled Douluo. Originally, the teachers at Shrek Academy had already planned to fight to the death. After all, there were still Hongjun and Mubai in the academy. Even if they couldn't leave, they still had to send these 2 children out. It's just that Flanders and the others didn't think too much at all. Dugu'ao didn't have the intention to tease Flanders and directly told him the reason why he came to Shrek. When Dugu'ao learned that Guiyu had not returned to Shrek Academy, he realized that he was a little anxious because of Oscar. He rushed to Shrek Academy in 3 days because of Oscar's disappearance, but Guiyu and the others didn't know, so naturally they wouldn't be in such a hurry. But when Flanders and the others heard the news, they felt like they were struck by lightning. Oscar is gone. How the hell is this gone just over a month ago? The food-related super genius who reached the Soul Master level at the age of 11 is just gone. To be honest, all the teachers such as Flanders and Zhao Wuji were heartbroken, especially Hongjun. At that time, he directly and excitedly retorted that it was impossible for Dugu'ao. His brother Ao was so talented. How could it be possible? So gone. Dugu'ao didn't care about Hongjun's collision now. After all, he had been mentally prepared before coming, but he didn't expect Guiyu to be away now. He was in a hurry this time and couldn't apologize in person. However, Dugu'ao was also a resolute person. Since Guiyu was not here, he had no intention of wasting time. He told Flender where to ask Guiyu to find him, and after making a promise, Dugu'ao left directly. Although Flanders and the others wanted to know some details, Dugu'ao didn't tell him, and they didn't dare to question him. After all, he was a titled Douluo, and squeezing them to death was as easy as squeezing an ant to death. As for doubting the authenticity of this news, why the hell do you even need to doubt it? As a titled Douluo, he personally came to inform the news, and he also planned to apologize to Guiyu. How could he be suspicious of this? It's just that Flanders still feels that things are unpredictable, and Oscar is the most talented, perseverant, and independent he has ever seen. Many good words can be applied to Oscar, because this year's Shrek has an Oscar. Flender himself feels a lot more relaxed, and he also makes money and improves the environment of the academy. It can be said that although Oscar is just a child, this child has changed his life to a certain extent. At least he is more progressive than in the original work, but now that he knew the news, not only Flanders was heartbroken, but the atmosphere of the entire Shrek Academy suddenly became depressed and sad. Although Mubai only spent less than a day with Oscar, he had a very deep impression of Oscar, and Oscar still had a sense of mystery in his heart, but he didn't have time to get to know this senior. People are like this. Gone. Mubai was not hiding in the dormitory and crying like Hongjun, but he could not help but be affected by the sad atmosphere in the college. But what makes Mubai feel that Oscar is a bit awesome is that even if Oscar is gone, it can still affect so many people. What kind of personality charm is this? Please collect, recommend, and vote for me monthly. Chapter 58 I Lost It and Stole It. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Oscar didn't know the sad atmosphere at Shrek Academy, because when Dugu'ao arrived at Shrek Academy, Oscar was still teaching Duguyan how to make poison. The poison made by Oscar may not be as good as the King of Hell's tie made by Tang San. but it is still not a problem to deal with the same level of soul masters. After all, there are many poisonous weeds in the eyes of ice and fire. The poisonous weeds that have been produced for 10,000 years have reached the level of elixirs, and their toxicity is far beyond the comparison of ordinary poisonous weeds. On the seventh day, Oscar taught Duguyan step by step how to use medicine and prepare poisons in the stone house. Dugu'ao and Gaiyu had quietly reached the eye of ice and fire. The reason why Dugu'ao took Gaiyu back in only 4 days was because on his way back, Dugu'ao chose to take the main road, and then happened to meet Gaiyu and Youxiang. When Dugu'ao told Gaiyu the news about Oscar, Gaiyu was stunned at first, and then looked at Dugu'ao in disbelief. "Senior, Xiao is under your nose. With your strength, you will protect him. Can't you stop him?" Of course, Dugu'ao knew that it was hard for Gaiyu to believe it, but he could only express his helplessness, because the ice and fire eye was a terrifying spring that even he did not dare to touch for a long time. Oscar fell into it, and Dugu'ao could not think of the second possibility. Dugu'ao told Gaiyu his findings and guesses at that time. No matter how much Gaiyu didn't believe it, he no longer had any doubts at this moment. After all, there is no need to say much. Dugu'ao is a title Douluo. There is no need to joke with him about this issue. Gaiyu calmed down for a while, and then he asked Youxiang to go back to Shrek Academy first, while he followed Dugu'ao back to the ice and fire eye at full speed. Arriving at the eye of ice and fire, Gaiyu followed Dugu'ao to the edge of the spring. Dugu'ao pointed out to Gaiyu the location where Oscar's 2 soul guides were found. Gaiyu squinted his eyes and looked at the spring water, and sighed after a long time. "Xiao, you have been with me for more than 2 years. In fact, I have regarded you as my son, and I want to train you well. After all, this guy bragged and told me that he wanted to take revenge with me." Gaiyu sat next to the Binghuo Liang Yi, looking at the spring water with 2 distinct colors, talking to himself for a while, and then got up and planned to leave, because he couldn't stay here for too long, otherwise the terrifying atmosphere of extreme cold and heat would hurt him. He understood that this was a place where even Dugu'ao didn't dare to stay for a long time. Gaiyu didn't get angry with Dugu'ao. Although there was some blame, so what? He is a title Douluo. Moreover, Dugu'ao had already reached this point as a banned person, so Gaiyu had nothing to blame him for, but what Gaiyu felt a little guilty about was that if he had chosen to stay, would Oscar have died like this? Will the results change? Dugu'ao also felt that this matter was his fault, so Dugu'ao promised Gaiyu a condition. As long as it did not violate ethics, Dugu'ao would go up the mountain of swords and go into the sea of fire. Facing Dugu'ao's promise, the first thing Gaiyu thought about was to let Dugu'ao help him get revenge. After all, he was only at level 85 now, and what he had to face was the entire Hongjun sect, and Hongjun sect was now it is already one of the lower 4 gates. For a man like him, this is absolutely huge. It's just that Gaiyu didn't do this. The disciple he originally planned to raise as his own son was gone, so how could he have the nerve to use his disciple's reputation to do things for himself? And although Gaiyu is eager for revenge and wishes to destroy the Hongjun sect now, he hopes to get revenge by relying on his own ability rather than relying on outsiders, so Gaiyu declined Dugu'ao's promise, saying that he just wanted to stay here to accompany Oscar for the first 7 years. After all, Oscar's body was gone and he could only build a tomb. Dugu'ao did not refuse this request, and although Gaiyu rejected his promise, he would not take it back. As long as Gaiyu needs it one day, Dugu'ao will still fulfill his promise. This is Dugu'ao's own credibility and the foundation of his career. To erect a tomb requires the belongings of the person concerned. Although Gaiyu had a few sets of Oscar's clothes and Oscar's sausages, they were too few, so Gaiyu wanted to get back Oscar's 2 soul guides, and for these one thing, even if Gaiyu doesn't say it himself, Dugu'ao must take the initiative to do it. So Dugu'ao took Gaiyu away from the Eye of Ice and Fire and went directly to the stone house. Although Dugu'ao had been away for 7 days, Duguyan was still here, and the 2 soul guides were given to Dugu'ao by Dugu'ao at that time, but what neither of them expected was that when they walked into the stone house, they heard Duguyan's silvery laughter, which was also mixed with a familiar male voice. Dugu'ao suddenly frowned, and Gaiyu's eyelids twitched. When they heard this male voice, Oscar's handsome face appeared in their minds at the same time, but no matter how they thought about it, it was impossible. But when the 2 of them walked into the stone house and saw the scene inside, the CPUs of these two powerful soul masters, who could be said to be at the top of the soul master world, almost burned out. I saw Oscar standing behind Duguyan, holding Duguyan's jade hand with both hands. The two of them were holding some herbs and tinkering with the bottles and jars in front of them. As if he noticed the slight movement, Oscar suddenly turned around, and then happened to look at Dugu'ao and Qiluo. What the hell? Oscar was stunned for a moment, then quickly let go of Duguyan's hand, and quickly took a step sideways to Duguyan's side, and Duguyan found that Oscar suddenly let go of her, causing her to almost drop the herbs in her hand. Just when Duguyan was about to ask Oscar what happened, she also turned around and saw the expressions of Dugu'ao and Qiluo. The expression of seeing a ghost. Duguyan was also stunned for a moment, and then her face quickly turned red. Even when Oscar taught her every step, she didn't blush because she was used to it these days, but now that Dugu'ao and Qiluo saw it, a sense of embarrassment and shyness surged up in an instant. Duguyan was stunned for a moment, and then timidly shouted, "Grandpa, Grandpa, are you back?" Hearing Duguyan's voice, Dugu'ao and Qiluo came back to their senses. Then their mental power locked on Oscar in an instant. When they found out that Oscar was Oscar, the two looked at each other inexplicably. Both of them saw confusion in each other's eyes, and then Qiluo's eyes showed joy and excitement, while Dugu'ao was not excited, but besides being happy, he was still angry. "Is your kid okay?" "It's okay. Why did you wait until I left before coming back? And what the hell were you doing just now?" "Embrace them all." After just a moment of hesitation, Dugu'ao turned into an afterimage and flashed towards Oscar in an instant. Oscar had already anticipated this outcome and hurriedly took another step sideways to hide behind Duguyan. "My Majesty, please listen to my explanation. This matter is an own mistake," Oscar said loudly, grabbing Duguyan's shoulders with both hands to block Dugu'ao. Duguyan also unconsciously opened her arms to block Dugu'ao, and explained, "By the way, Grandpa, it is indeed a misunderstanding. Please listen to our explanation. P.S. Correct typos first and later." Chapter 59 Explanation. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Dugu'ao stopped in front of Duguyan and stared at Oscar behind her with unkind eyes. Oscar did not look at Dugu'ao. After all, this matter was considered his problem, which led to this mistake. Moreover, the old man saw the scene where he was holding Duguyan just now. Oscar still felt a little guilty, and it's not just Dugu'ao. Qiluo is also staring at Oscar with a serious face. Although Oscar is still alive, which makes him feel happy and excited again, things are definitely not that simple. After all, before this, Dugu'ao firmly believed that Oscar was gone, but now Oscar is standing here intact, and he is so close to the granddaughter of Piercing Douluo. Obviously something happened. Oscar secretly pinched Duguyan's shoulder, indicating that she should speak first, otherwise Oscar himself would not dare to take the lead in explaining. Duguyan felt Oscar's little movement, and her beautiful eyebrows moved slightly, and then she said slowly, "Grandpa, Xiao is actually fine. He was taking the fairy herb in the ice and fire eyes. Because some special reasons entered the ice and fire eyes, and because he took the two special herbs of Xianpin, he will not be hurt by the ice and fire eyes. The reason why we couldn't find him when we went there in the afternoon was also because of this. And the next day, shortly after you left, when I went down, I happened to meet Xiao coming out of the Binghuoliang I found that we had misunderstood." Having said this, the scene at that time suddenly reappeared in Duguyan's mind. Oscar's huge capital instantly occupied his mind, making Duguyan's cheeks turn crimson. At this time, Oscar hurriedly continued to explain, "Your Majesty, so this is a mistake. After I listened to my sister explain the whole process to me, it was already too late. With our speed, we naturally can't catch up with you, so we chose not to waste time and continue to practice here. After all, you will definitely come back. It will be good to explain things clearly when you come back." After Oscar finished explaining to Dugu'ao, he looked at Qiluo again. "Teacher, what happened this time was that the student was impulsive and made you worried." Qiluo breathed a sigh of relief when he heard this. "It's okay, as long as you're okay." After listening to Oscar and his granddaughter's explanation, Dugu'ao's face gradually calmed down, but his eyes were still staring at Oscar fiercely. Why don't you let go of Yan quickly? How long are you going to hold her? When Oscar heard this, he suddenly let go of his hands and took 2 steps back. After hearing Dugu'ao's words, Duguyan's face turned even crimson, a bit like a ripe apple. Oscar took 2 steps back and continued, "Don't get me wrong, my sister and I were just studying poisons, nothing else." It's just that Oscar didn't explain it, but Dugu'ao got angry when he explained it. "You're so good at dancing between ice and fire, forget it, I'm only going out for a few days, why the hell are you hooking up with my granddaughter? Still researching poisons? How can I not know what my granddaughter is like? And when you study poisons, you study poisons. How the hell are you doing this with your hands?" Seeing the faint blue veins popping up on Dugu'ao's forehead, Oscar immediately said, "Your Majesty, I have a way to cure you and your sister's poison, and I am sure to cure your poison. I have found a way." Hearing this, Dugu'ao frowned, then breathed a long sigh of relief and said lightly, "Seriously?" Oscar nodded, "Of course, it's just that you and your sister need to extract the poison from your body before you can implement it, otherwise it won't be completely eradicated. So you have to find a soul bone for your sister, preferably one that is 10,000 years old. Anyway, the higher the grade, the better." Dugu'ao nodded after hearing this, and after thinking for a while, he replied, "I can get Yan's soul bone within half a month, how can we cooperate?" Oscar thought for a while and replied, "For the time being, I will refine all the poisons in the body into the soul bones. Then I will prepare some pills for you and my sister. When the time comes, take them together with the antidote. My sister will be able to fully recover within 3 months. It will be lifted, but because you are severely corroded by the poison, it is conservatively estimated that it will take a year." 1 year? Dugu'ao murmured after hearing this, and then asked, "How sure are you of my poison?" "At least 80%, if nothing else happens, it should be eradicated. Maybe your strength will also improve by then." Oscar replied with a smile. Seeing Oscar smiling, Dugu'ao glared at him, "Don't be proud, kid. Don't think that you can be unscrupulous just because you have done me such a big favor." Dugu'ao was about to say a few words to warn Oscar, but Duguyan directly stopped Dugu'ao. "Grandpa, why are you like this again? Xiao Ao helped us. Without him, our poison would have troubled us for who knows how long." Woolen cloth. After hearing this, Dugu'ao calmed down a little. After all, what Duguyan said made sense, and Dugu'ao also had the idea of bringing the two together before. After all, Oscar is indeed excellent, but somehow, whenever he thought of the way Oscar held Duguyan's hand just now, Dugu'ao couldn't help but want to embarrass Oscar. Oscar didn't care about Dugu'ao's deliberate embarrassment. After all, old men were like this. It was strange that his precious granddaughter, who he had loved for more than 10 years, was so close to other yellow hairs all of a sudden, and he felt uncomfortable. This is just like in real life, a guy riding a motorcycle parked downstairs of your house and asked your girl to go out for a wander. By the way, he also asked, "Lao Deng, is it safe to park the car?" But no matter how you say it, the yellow hair is Oscar now, and the meaning is still different. After all, Oscar's own conditions are too good, and he can also detoxify. In fact, in a sense, from Dugu'ao's perspective, if Oscar and Duguyan are together, his gains will be the same as Oscar and Duguyan being together, because Oscar can not only detoxify them, but his own talent is also very strong. If he doesn't die young in the future, he can basically reach the realm of title Douluo. And with Oscar's talent, even if he is a food-type soul master, in Dugu'ao's opinion, in the future Oscar can also go a long way on the road of title Douluo. As for combat power, Oscar's external soul bone can already make up for it. After all, his external soul bone evolves as his strength increases. Even if the external soul bone is not a martial spirit, Oscar will be able to cultivate it too in the realm of title Douluo. The power of the attached soul bone increases to the 100,000-year level, so when the time comes, Oscar will definitely be able to protect himself, regardless of fighting the enemy. Coupled with his own auxiliary abilities, Oscar's achievements will definitely not be low, so if Duguyan and Oscar are allowed to be together, Dugu'ao is actually quite satisfied. It's just that at this stage, Dugu'ao suddenly saw two children so close to each other, and he was not happy in his heart. After all, you two have only known each other for a week, right? And isn't Oscar only 11 years old? Who is so good at picking up girls at the age of 11? P.S. Correct typos first and later. Please give me monthly votes and recommended votes. Chapter 60 Sending the Elixir, the Soul Bone has arrived. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Yu felt sad at first during this trip, but the moment he saw Oscar, everything disappeared. After Oscar explained what happened clearly, Dugu'ao and Yu also understood the reason. After Dugu'ao learned the exact information that Oscar could help them detoxify, he left the Sunset Forest directly because he said that he would get a soul bone for Duguyan back within half a month. Oscar didn't know where Dugu'ao was going to assemble a 10,000-year-old soul bone in such a short time. But judging from his appearance, he seemed to have a goal, but he didn't know which lucky person it would be. After Dugu'ao left, Oscar told Yu not to go back in a hurry, because Oscar wanted to refine some elixirs for Yu to take back, while Oscar himself stayed in the Sunset Forest to practice for a period of time, which could be as long as 1 year or as short as half a year. As long as Oscar fully digests the medicinal power of the star anise ice grass and the fiery apricot, and completely completes the ice and fire alchemy body, he will no longer need to stay in the Sunset Forest. Oscar didn't want to waste the time in between, so he planned to ask Yu to take back the elixir he had refined and distributed to Shrek's teacher and Hongjun. However, apart from Hongjun's elixir, Flanders's was not. It was not that Oscar was reluctant to part with the elixir, but that he was still hesitant about refining the elixir for Flanders and the others. After all, there are only a dozen fairy herbs here, and Oscar needs to think about how to use them. However, in the end, although Oscar did not refine a separate immortal elixir for Flanders and the others, he still refined a special elixir that was comparable to the immortal elixir. However, the effect was weaker than that of the immortal herb, but it was better than one yin. The elixir refined from higher-level elixirs is stronger. Oscar spent another half-month one after another. During this half-month, Oscar refined several kinds of elixirs. They were based on the 10,000-year elixir 9-grade purple Jiji and the immortal grade Hunyuan jelly grass, combined with dozens of elixirs. The 9th grade Hunyuan Dan is refined from the elixir that strengthens the body. The 9th grade Hunyuan pill was refined in a furnace, and 12 pills were produced. Its function is to break through the cultivation level, change tendons and cut marrow, and the effect is comparable to ordinary fairy herbs. It's just that the Oscars for the 9th grade Hunyuan pill were only given to Flanders, Zhao Wuji and Xiao Xian, but not to Li Youxiang and Lu Qibin, because their talents are indeed somewhat different. Even if they take the 9th grade Hunyuan pill, in the future, it is also difficult to break through Soul Douluo, and Soul Saint will be able to stand up to the sky. Therefore, in order not to waste such precious elixirs, Oscar did not prepare them for these two teachers. However, although they do not have the 9th grade Hunyuan pill, they do have treasure pills refined from 10,000 years of elixir, which can further enhance their strength, but the effect is naturally not as good as the 9th grade Hunyuan pill that is comparable to the immortal herb. In addition to these, Oscar also specially refined an immortal elixir for Yu. The immortal elixir used as the main elixir is called Black Jade Divine Bamboo, which is very suitable for Yu's kind of swordsmanship. Therefore, if he takes the Black Jade Divine Bamboo pill, which is made from the Black Jade Divine Bamboo as its main medicine, it can be said that Yu's chances of breaking through to a title Douluo will be much faster in the future. The reason why Yu was given the special elixir was not only because he was Oscar's teacher, but also because Yu's own talent allowed him to become a title Douluo. Now paired with a pill, it will undoubtedly allow Yu to go further. In the future, it is possible to reach or surpass the current number 1 swordsman, Sword Douluo Qiansun. Oscar, the entire Shrek Academy, has made arrangements, but Mubai, who has just enrolled, has not. Because Oscar really doesn't understand Mubai now, so he will not directly give him these benefits. After all, he only spent one afternoon with Mubai. Although Mubai seemed pretty good that afternoon, it might be that he was just pretending to be a new arrival. After all, she was born into a royal family, and the image in the original work is indeed not very good. Although the novel is only described from the perspective of the protagonist group, there must be certain problems in being described in that way. Therefore, until Oscar sees Dai Mubai's true nature clearly, he will not give him any external help, and this was also the case when Oscar followed Flanders and the others into the sea to obtain whale glue. Students who will enroll in Shrek Academy in the future must also be recognized by the teachers, and their character will be confirmed before whale glue will be given to them for practice. Since fairy herbs are more precious than whale glue, Oscar naturally has to be even more secretive. After refining the elixirs for Gaiyu, Gaiyu brought back all the elixirs for Hongjun and Flanders, while Oscar continued to practice in the eyes of ice and fire. In the past half-month, apart from refining alchemy, Oscar's interaction with Dugu Yan has become more and more natural. Even in front of Gaiyu, he did not hide anything. Even Gaiyu could see the mutual admiration between the two of them, but Dugu'ao could not be there, otherwise Oscar might not be so presumptuous. However, Gaiyu still warned Oscar. He was only 11 years old now and he still had to focus on cultivation. He could not slack off in cultivation because of emotional problems, let alone indulge in it and waste himself. Oscar also agreed with this. Even if he is really together with Duguyan, Oscar will definitely restrain himself from being obsessed with women, because the word sexuality is a knife in the head. If you don't control it well, it is really possible. Ruined for life. Nowadays, Oscar has lofty ideals and goals, so naturally he will not allow himself to indulge in them. Although Duguyan is very tempting, Oscar believes that as long as he can keep his heart, then everything will not be a problem. Half a month passed by in a flash. The day after Gaiyu left, which was also the 16th day after Dugu'ao left, Dugu'ao came back and brought back a right arm bone that was 24,500 years old. According to Dugu'ao himself, this soul bone comes from a bone-eating poisonous python. The soul bone produced will most likely be an explosive poison attribute skill. And because it comes from a snake-like soul beast, it can be said to be very suitable for Dugu Yan. However, when Oscar and Dugu Yan asked where this soul bone came from, Dugu'ao just had a different emotion flash in his eyes and did not say it out loud. He just said that they were not qualified to know this yet and would talk about it later. But what made Dugu'ao a little unhappy was that he found that after he left for half a month, his granddaughter and Oscar seemed to be closer. The two of them spoke with an inexplicable tacit understanding. This made him very depressed, because after reviewing the review, he discovered that from the time when Dugu Yan chased the purple poison viper into Oscar's camp until now, in nearly a month, Dugu Yan has basically. He was alone with Oscar. Even if he wasn't alone, Gaiyu, that kid, was so cold that he basically wouldn't fit into the circle of two children, so two people who already like each other are equivalent to being alone for nearly a month. Dugu'ao can understand that this sparks, but the only one who is unhappy about this is his granddaughter. But there was nothing he could do. After all, he had to run around during this period. He couldn't delay Dugu Yan's affairs, right? P.S. Typos should be corrected first and then corrected.